Welcome everyone, Questine here with a discussion about the Dark Elves in Total War Warhammer 3. They are certainly one of the best races in the game, but they do have one critical issue. And I'm fairly certain that this particular issue is one of the reasons they're played by so few people, because if I'm doing a popularity poll, and even the Steam achievements do indicate a lot of people don't play Dark Elves. And the reason behind that, I think, is less to do with the race and its mechanics, slaves included, but more to do with the lack of campaign variety, because if you play one Dark Elf campaign, especially if you're thinking about Malekith, Helbron, Morfi, you might as well have played all the others. And the ones that are distant, Lokir and Rakarth do have their own issues. So over here in this video, I want to talk about the problems that do exist in these campaigns and the lack of variety that Dark Elves do have. Really powerful race, but it's really the race carrying the campaigns as opposed to a situation like you might have with, say, the High Elves, where you do have a great variety in the campaigns, even if the race has certain issues. So anyway, let's consider Malekith. His faction effects are pretty boring. He gets a diplomatic relations benefit with other Dark Elves. This is good if you're looking to confederate the minor factions of the Dark Elves, all well and fine from that perspective, but if you're looking to confederate the major factions, he's actually the hardest one to do it. He doesn't have a great position for it to begin with. And on top of that, the one neighbor he does have, Helbron, is such a powerful faction that's constantly taking territory from her neighbors that she's actually a nightmare. It's so much easier to play a campaign as Helbron or even Morfi and confederate Malekith than it is to do it the other way around, despite that diplomatic benefit that he does have, which helps with the natural aversion that Dark Elves do have towards each other. Another thing that I do consider a downside in his campaign is his short campaign victory condition, which, to be fair, the benefit doesn't matter that much, but it's still annoying to have a short campaign victory condition which requires you to go a long distance away in order to complete it. So that could use an update. Tyrion could also use an update from that particular perspective. And just having an upkeep benefit for Dread Spears and Dark Shards and other units, though mainly Dread Spears and Dark Shards will benefit from that, is not quite as significant as you might think, because Dark Elves have one of the best economies in the game. You are reliant on getting slaves, but you have plenty of opportunities for that. The only saving grace, if you will, is that yes, you do have a good lord with a good skill line with various quest items over here that you can get, so there is a decent level of power over there. And you can either go for Tyrant or you can go for War Leader. I'd probably recommend War Leader, because while certainly that one control in all provinces is not something to sneeze at, I would dare say War Leader with 10% upkeep for all your armies, post-battle loot benefits, and a lot of income from looting and sacking settlements does add up to quite a bit. Also Lord Groot rank faction-wide, and also reducing attrition casualties and taking more and getting more replenishment. Always beneficial. Though I think the Iron Foothills as a province really leaves a lot to be desired, and I'm not just talking about it from a Dark Elf campaign. It's so questionable that they decided to make the Dark Elf capital in such a crappy province. This goes all the way back to Warhammer 2, though I think it was better in Warhammer 2, at least in the Vortex campaign, not so much Mortal Empire. So yeah, really questionable decision. It's Hard Cauldron can be indefensible. The one benefit you do have is you can be actually best friends with Grombrindle. If you're playing Grombrindle, you obviously want to wipe out Malekith, but if you're playing Malekith, it's there's no reason why you have to wipe him out. He doesn't hate you so much that it's impossible to make alliances with him, and because of the climate change over here in the north, you can actually sell all of this territory to Grombrindle, have him secure the north for you while you go deal with other problems in the form of Alifanar, Tarok, Sisters of Twilight, potentially Katep as well. But he's the generic legendary lord for the Dark Elves, and he just feels uninteresting, honestly, as a campaign. Malekith was much better in Warhammer 2, but I think because of the changes that have been made to Warhammer 3, there are better campaigns, either in the short-term campaign or the long-term perspective of a Dark Elf campaign. Yeah, it just doesn't feel that exciting to play someone like him. The second campaign to talk about is, of course, Morfi, and I think Morfi has the most interesting campaign of the Dark Elves, certainly in the long game, because she plays like every other Dark Elf Legendary Lord. However, she does have Slaaneshi Corruption, And she does bring a bunch of benefits to her campaign through her skill line, through her starting position, through her diplomatic prowess. You might think Morfi is a brutal conqueror, but in reality, she's a master diplomat. Make alliances with Mazdamundi, ally half the world against whoever, right? The only factions you have to fight are the High Elves, because they do hate you, though there's also ways of making that work. The one downside here is the victory condition does require you to go deal with Harganef, but honestly, it's not really that big of a problem. It's one thing for Malekith to have to travel all the way from there to Lothern, because by the time he arrives, Tyrion is going to be an unstoppable force, or as close to one that AI can muster in a campaign. But for Morfi to go deal with Helbron when Helbron is naturally going to be dealing with other factions, yeah, that's not really a concern. Truth be told, the victory condition, the short campaign victory benefit, is not necessarily worth it in any campaign, regardless. So you could decide to ignore it. Including in Malekith's case, it is something worth pointing out. Now, Morfi does also gain other benefits as well. She gains Death Hag capacity through her control building, which is really good, because between Sinnelleos corruption, that does benefit you quite a lot, and especially in the fact that Dark Elves can struggle with control, and the fact that you're gaining hero capacity as well as Exalted Demonettes through this building, there's quite a few benefits. The one downside is you will be running around with fewer K-Knight Assassins in the campaign. I can sing the world's tiniest violin for the K-Knight Assassins. Genuinely the least interesting heroes in the entire Dark Elf roster, so yeah, you're not going to suffer for lacking them. This campaign is crazy, especially because you do start so close to Wolf 1, so you can actually just, like, get a jump on them. See, the thing about Wolf 1 is that after, like, 20-30 turns, in the vast majority of cases, Tyrion and Alariel and Elfarion will become a very strong force. But up until that point, they have vulnerability. Build a Black Ark, build two stacks alongside Morfi's stack, and just send them all the way to Wolf 1. You also get an extra benefit with respect to your early game, because you do get extra hero capacity for sorceresses in your campaign. And the benefit, and you also get regeneration on an item, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, you think Morfi's a caster lord, in reality she's a really powerful melee combatant. Certainly not the most powerful in the Dark Elven Legendary Lord roster, but still a good amount of capability over there. Like with Malekith, I would not necessarily focus so much on her magic tree, though she does get plenty of magic benefits. Being able to unlock caster heroes from pretty early on does certainly make things better. It's worth also pointing out that another problem with the Dark Elves is, yeah, their lack of variety in their lore choices. I mean, Supreme Sorceresses are only worth getting if you're lacking heroes, which you won't because plenty of heroes. High Beastmasters are not worth it in a lot of ways, so you're just basically stuck with Dreadlord, hybrid version, or Sword and Shield. I generally go with Sword and Shield. That's Silver Shield is certainly very strong, though you can make an argument in favor of having a Black Dragon Dreadlord, because both of them can get Black Dragon that has a ranged weapon attack and range benefits as well. Just a very minor difference between the two of them. Yeah, Morfi has a lot of power, is the best campaign, and is the only one that actually feels in any significant way different than the others. You can argue about other campaigns having their unique mechanics, but generally I feel like they're gimmicks, whereas her Sinnelleos corruption is actually fitting the Dark Elf so well to the point that I really don't want to play any other Dark Elf campaign besides her. It's the most unique quote-unquote Dark Elven campaign, though certainly could use some improvements. The only challenge you might face is potentially Astankia, but let me be blunt, Astankia is only a challenge in the late game if she builds up a lot of curses, and there's ways of dealing with that. So Morfi has a lot of potential. And because she starts with a non-aggression pack to good old Mazdamundi, even more so. It's like, this is one of the craziest rides. Like, I would dare say Morfi is on Grimgor levels of power if you play her. I mean, she's not as strong as Grimgor under AI control, though it's worth remembering back in Warhammer 2, she could launch massive invasions of Wolf 1 on her freaking own and make your life a miserable hell if you're playing any of the High Elven campaigns over there. So yeah, not the Legendary Lord to be underestimated in any way, shape, or form. Great campaign, great Lord, and the most amount of quote-unquote variety in the Dark Elf campaign. Could be better, though. Could certainly focus on the magic. Like, I think like Geld has certainly redefined what we expect from a magical legendary lord, and yeah, there's plenty of those. Though I would say Morfi needs the least. Like poor Mazda Mundi, poor miserable Teclis as well. So let's move on. Third campaign to talk about is, of course, Helbron. Now, I think if I was to do a poll on which campaign the player base considers the least interesting of the Dark Elves, Helbron would probably come up at the top, by far. She came with the Queen of the Crone DLC, which was the first DLC of Warhammer 2, and while Alariel has certainly scaled up very well, Helbron just doesn't really feel that interesting. To be very clear on this, I think a lot of people underestimate just how freaking powerful Helbron is. She's really good in combat. She gets a death actually. She starts a replenishment. She has an amazing starting province, and that works very well with the Dark Elves as a race. I would dare say Helbron works amazingly well in terms of like fitting within the meta of the Dark Elves, how you want to play them in a campaign. You can also confederate Malekith in the easiest possible way. You may have to provoke a war between him and Valkia. I've done a whole guide on that, but suffice to say, lots of potential in this campaign. The reason it's not an interesting campaign, and I'm fairly sure quite a few people would agree with this, for all the power you do have on this, the faction effects just are not interesting. It's like, oh, I can get more hero capacity for death hacks. That's great. Oh, I can get Sacrifice of Cain at a cheaper cost. That's amazing. I mean, it's a freaking 40 turn cooldown sacrifice, so does that matter? And while you do have a good faction effect with the Blood Queen effect, right, getting a lot of power in battle, and mentioning that this is actually better than Malekith in a lot of ways and comparable to Morfi, having to constantly sacrifice slaves, like a lot of people do hate the slave mechanic, but sacrificing slaves to keep this bar up is dull as dirt. I mean, it's not a problem. I think some people, or quite a lot of people, do exaggerate how bad the slave mechanic is, but summoning a rogue army that's not under your control and has the tendency of declaring war on factions and potentially, and I say potentially because you can refuse to get involved, but potentially dragging you in multiple wars and ends up being just an XP farm for your enemies, yeah, that's not a particularly good mechanic. It's never worked that well. It's never been an interesting campaign from this perspective. Certainly it's always worked because Dark Elves are Dark Elves, but yeah, Helbron, she's got power because of her starting position. She's got that control benefit. It's not Sinnelleos corruption. You do have to keep it up for a campaign. It's not as much of a problem as people make it out to be, but yeah, pretty dull lord. Not really that much on offer, I would dare say. Even confederating her, like, yeah, you're getting a powerful lord in battle, but like basic lords of the Dark Elves are powerful in battle, so she's not even that great, really. And honestly, for a Hag Queen, if I'm focusing on Hags, Morfi has a lot on offer from that perspective. Certainly, that hero capacity early in a campaign is great. Casualties post-battle make the slavery situation more manageable. But like anything the Helbron can do, Morfi can do better in a lot of ways. Just confederating Malekith is easier with her if you cheese the game. That's the only tangible benefit of this campaign. And of course, you know, just the starting position works out quite well. Anyway, let's move on. We get to Lokir Felhart, who starts in Cathay. This is a great campaign if you're looking to play a short Dark Elf campaign and really experience Cathay, which is a great area of the campaign map. Honestly, every campaign in this area benefits immensely, even if the races and legendary lords aren't too great. To be fair, Lokir does have some very substantial benefits. He gets far more Black Arcs than anyone else, and he does also start with the special Black Arc over here that actually has a landmark. So there's quite a few benefits over here for Lokir, and then he gets an extra commandment that vastly increases his income from sacking settlements, which you want to do in a Dark Elf campaign, and also gives you various benefits for Corsair units. He's all about the Corsairs. He's a free legendary lord that was kind of a joke in Warhammer 2, but right now I would dare say he's quite a lot of fun. Good lord effects, good faction effects, absolutely makes it work. And he does have the uniqueness of a starting position. Absolutely. So a lot of things to enjoy in the short term. However, and there is a big one over here, his campaign is quite freaking miserable if you're looking to play a long one. The reason has to do with the victory conditions. Having to go all the way to Ulfaram from your starting position is not great. This obviously applies to all Dark Elven campaigns, you know, distance to Ulf 1. And it's also annoying having to deal with both Teclis and fricking Emmerich. What's frustrating is the climate over here with Wasteland is certainly not going to fit this campaign, because this was a campaign designed for Lustria. It's worth remembering that. And he also has Unpleasant with Cast Wasteland, which is another downside here. Great campaign if you're looking to conquer Cafe, but moving beyond that, yeah, it's a lot of fun for the first 20-30 turns. Works quite well, can enjoy it, but like anything longer than that, you're really going to start feeling the limitations of both where you start, the distances you have to conquer to go, you have to cover to go back home. Oh, but you get the Confederation with Karen Carr. Great, one of the most vulnerable positions in the entire campaign map, and you can confederate it. Even assuming you get Confederation with Karen Carr, if Alifanar doesn't beat you to it, have fun with that. Sure, they have stated that these kind of minor AI factions get the benefit, so you can actually pull it off. But yeah, it's like, good luck defending this. I'm sure everyone around you is just gonna look at you and leave you over there. And imagine having to deal with Alifanar with the secondary army in this campaign. I mean, props to you if you make that work. It certainly can add more variety to this campaign, but I'm not fond of dual star campaigns. And it's not even really a dual star campaign. It's more like an objective you get later down the line, more similar to Forik than someone like Elfarian or Jan Bo. So there are issues in terms of how this campaign plays in the long term, but really fun campaign, don't get me wrong, really fun for the early game, really enjoyable, diversity of climate, diversity of enemies in Cafe. But I would dare say that's not so much of a compliment to Lokir himself per se, more of a compliment to whoever designed Cafe in Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Because, by the way, Cafe was a joke in Realms of Chaos. So, good fun, early game, falls behind in the late game. And yeah, I would rather play any campaign that actually starts in Aggron than this one. The next campaign is, of course, Malice Darkblade. Oh, Malice Darkblade, are you dull as hell to play? I never quite cared much for this campaign. Yes, he is a powerful legendary lord. Yes, he has a secure starting position. Yes, he avoids attrition from chaos corruption, but only for his army, and he does still have to deal with it for all his other armies. Honestly, his entire skill line is just lacking. Yes, oh great, I got the bit of control and upkeep in the province. Fun, really fun compared to some of the benefits Morfi, Malakiv, Lokir get. Yeah, this is a joke. Oh, but you can be really powerful in battles. Yeah, in Warhammer 2 this made sense, I get it, because having one really powerful army in Warhammer 2, given the meta there, worked quite well. Warhammer 3 is all about building a lot of armies, and to be quite blunt about it, Malice Darkblade, he can do it. He's still a Dark Elf Legendary Lord, but it's a pretty dull starting position, and I think like Chaos Waste's like great location to start a campaign if you want to build a massive empire across the campaign map, because it's very safe, not necessarily that many enemies or just a few early game enemies, but yeah, once you do that, it's over. You do get a ridiculous level of power and diplomatic benefits of demonic faction, so you're even safer than that, and you start with full possession, so not really a problem with respect to that. But here's the thing, it's kind of meaningless, because you're still a freaking Dark Elves. Guess what? Even if you never use possession, you will be fine in the vast majority of battles of your campaign. And if there's ever a situation you can just allow full possession and then chug some potions after that, you're actually far better in this campaign to just go full control and get that 100 growth benefit. But is that so important? Well, the corruption benefit obviously helps you because you start in a very corrupted place. The growth benefit, yes, it's nice, but it can also bankrupt you because you're going to end up building faster than you can actually afford. And besides, Dark Elves do have a good amount of growth because, yeah, there's a 50 growth dynamic. It's a good amount of power. The potion does get more expensive over time, but still, it's just not... It's not a great mechanic. It's never been a great mechanic, and I think people have made this point. Like, there's a whole Reddit series on, like, you know, best on the DLC rankings and all that, or DLC elimination, and people made this point, like, Malice always felt incomplete, in the sense that people believe that his campaign was originally designed to be Rakarf's campaign, and then it's like, well, Malice is more popular, so let's use that and slap in the position mechanic. The position mechanic is not fun. It's like you get some objectives from Sarkhan to deal with X faction. The rewards aren't worth it, and they add position, and you're gonna benefit more from having full control over Malice in your campaign overall. So, yeah, not really a fun campaign. Faction effects. Ooh, great, we can be possessed, and we can get some objectives, and then we get a bit of extra gold from... Well, more than a bit of gold from gold mines. But here's the thing, you're not making money in a Dark Elf campaign for the freaking gold mines or any resource. Though, to be sure, you can certainly benefit from them. But you're making gold for the Artisan's House. Now, you can make this campaign more interesting as you do start to have grief as a tier 2 settlement. So if you're willing to fight the campaign over here at Dual Start, which you certainly have the power to do so, you can make this very interesting, I suppose, but it's like the lack of faction effects, the unique campaign mechanic being a letdown. It's like, yeah, just having with 2 starting positions from the get-go can make things interesting and just not that fun, though. Especially considering trying to build up armies over here to try and stop Grombrindle and others from, taking this territory. Though you do have a great climate control possibility over Nagaron because you have both mountains and frozen, so that's good. If there's any real downside, there's like, yeah, you have to go for Wolf 1 anyways. You might think, oh, I have a lot of campaign flexibility because I have a good amount of climate. Yeah, you don't have as much campaign flexibility. He does benefit from Norska being made, I mean... could take the gas wasteland, but I would dare say, Norska's climate changes are actually better, as opposed to the constant freaking attrition that you might take in gas wasteland. Still, with secondary and tertiary armies and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just feels lacking. Powerful, but it's dull. Like, that's the best way I could describe Malice Darkplay. You can be very powerful, but it's not the excitement. You know what's exciting? Building a massive global alliance with factions. Seeing how far you can push the diplomacy of a game as Morfi. Using Slaneshi corruption to get the better economy, better control. That's fun. Having better growth, it's like, oh, great. I get to spend money faster on structures in a campaign. That's fun. Oh, or making a really powerful leader in Bal. It's like, okay, for a very powerful race. Like, if he was Vampire Coast as a Legendary Lord, yeah, night and day freaking difference. But he's a Legendary Lord for one of the most powerful races. You can play with generic Lords in your entire campaign and completely ignore the Legendary Lord as the Dark Elves, and you can do very fine in that campaign. So yeah, Malice... I mean, the DLC is worth it. There's a lot of good stuff over here. You get Masters, worth it. You get good stuff for Skaven, which is very worth it on a lot of their campaigns, if not all of them. So absolutely worth buying this DLC, but yeah, I'd rather Confederate Malice Darkblade or not even bother with him whatsoever. And then finally we have Rakarf, whose entire campaign is focused on monster hunting. He gets a chance to capture a variety of monsters when he fights certain factions, though not all of them are going to be particularly interesting. I mean, who cares about feral cold ones, for instance? I mean, Carnosaurs, Hydras, Black Dragons, the Stegodons are certainly awesome. A lot of the other ones, or all the other ones, not really quite that great. Oh, let me fight sea bells when I don't start to the Black Ark and I'm very far away from the sea and from any kind of real opposition on the sea in this particular starting position. Like, honestly, if he was on the east coast of Lestria with the Black Ark as a starting thing, yeah, that would be better. This campaign has always felt weird, ever since it was introduced, and I do buy into the theory that originally he was supposed to be the paid DLC character, because, like, you look at Malice Darkblade, one thing I didn't mention is he gets a right, if he has full control, to summon a high-end army of beasts. Yeah, guess where that would fit very well? This particular campaign. Though here's the problem with beasts. They're powerful in battle, though they can be hard countered by certain things. They're certainly powerful in battle, but they're very expensive units, so by the time you actually want to use them in battle, you've kind of won your campaign. The basic Dark Elf army is quite capable of handling any threat that you might genuinely encounter in this campaign. I mean, it's certainly a benefit, but this campaign just doesn't really feel that interesting. The upkeep benefit, like, monsters are fairly expensive. The ones you want to recruit are fairly expensive. You only get minus 10% upkeep benefit. Karenkar always is an option, but unlike Lokir, who at least gets a ton of money, it's not quite as viable for you, and enjoy dealing with Be'lakor and Alif Anar with secondary armies over there. The problem for Rakarth in particular, though, is not his faction effects. That's not what ruins this campaign. The problem is Lustria in itself. See, the jungle territory in every campaign, unless you have the underway, so yes, Skaven and Dwarves, and Greenskins, unless you have the underway ability, and so you could add a Leaf and R on that subject, but unless you have the underway ability, it's actually so very slow to navigate the jungle. The reason this matters for Dark Elves in particular, and makes his campaign such a pain, and the worst campaign for Dark Elves, is Dark Elves are built around the idea of rapid expansion. The way they maintain that extremely powerful economy is fighting battles and capturing slaves. Problem is, between the distances of territory that you have to deal with in Lustria, as well as the slow movement speed, you're actually at risk of running out of slaves. It's not as big of a problem as some people might make it out to be, but it's still an issue that you're going to have to deal with throughout the course of your campaign. And yeah, you can get Karenkar and make the situation better, undeniably so. It can be fun with the beast, but it's more of a gimmick as opposed to like actual, campaign greenness. Like, I think a campaign is the most interesting when you do have a good amount of variety, but it's also optimal to play with that variety. This is the reason Oxyatel's campaign works, because he gets all those blessed units, but because of the way his campaign is, you want to use them. And those are just regular units that are better, and you want to use them anyway. Also, you can teleport to a region and just build a doom stack with those blessed units, so that's really nice and fun. Lokir, Malice Darkar play Lokir and all that, they work in better ways than this campaign. Like, just that slow movement speed is not great. One campaign that works really well when you get that variety of powerful units is Malachi, because obviously he gets a lot of units through his adventures that you may not usually recruit in a regular Dwarf campaign, but you're recruiting it in Malachi's campaign. But here's the thing, in that campaign, it's well worth doing it. The adventures give you significant benefits, they give tons of money, they pay off for themselves. Just the ability of getting, I can get the Stegodon. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. And it's a feral one, so yeah, good luck even controlling this thing properly and dealing with the crappy terrain of Lustria. If it wasn't for Lustria, I would still say this campaign was lackluster, but Lustria's territory and the way it's organized does leave a lot to be desired. It's not even a challenge, more so. It's just like a frustrating experience. And the reason I say it's no challenge is like, Jan Bo, you hard counter his army. Because, heavily armored Cathayan units don't stand a chance against all the armor piercing the Dark Elves have. Don't even get me started on Marcus Wolfhard, who doesn't even have that going for him. And that's even assuming you'll fight them for any serious length of time. The only challenge you might face in this campaign is Tenuin, and the moment you deal with him is like Scrollcast free reign to control all of it, to keep Gorak in check, and that's effectively it. It's just a slow campaign that wasn't necessarily well designed, and probably should have been a paid DLC campaign. Like, why would you hire such a well-known actor to voice your character if you're not going to make him a paid DLC lord? Just a bizarre thing. I mean, it's not necessarily fact, though, because, Gotrek is voiced by Brian Blessed, right? So make of that what you will. But yeah, this campaign is the least interesting Dark Elf campaign. It doesn't even take advantage of the racial strength, so this is the only Dark Elf campaign where you can genuinely say you don't even get the full benefits of the Dark Elves as race, because again, rapid expansion, instant construction, the slave benefits, maintaining a lot of armies, you're not going to be able to do it in this campaign as you would in all the other campaigns. So yeah, absolutely not a campaign worth playing in anyway. And while your short campaign victory condition is not the problem, the long campaign, yeah, pretty freaking far away to go from Lustria to Ulthuan, I gotta say. Pretty far away is a journey. I mean, you could make it work, I guess, Karenkar and all that, but not a great experience from my perspective. Though, potentially very difficult if you decide to, try and stop a Leaf and R. Good luck with that. So that is all I had to say. It is quite a shame to have such a powerful race being let down by either mediocre campaigns or campaigns that just lack the variety that you would need to have a much better experience in a campaign. Like, yeah, Rakarth is not in a great position. Malice Darkblade, I'd say the two worst are actually Malice Darkblade and Rakarth, who probably would work better if they were combined for whatever reason. Lokir is fun for the short term. Morfi's a powerhouse, really fun. Helbron is strong, but not particularly exciting. And yeah, the less said about Malik, the better. Is an interesting comparison to make with the High Elves, who may have issues as a race, but with the exception of Teclis, every single one of their campaigns is fairly unique. Alariel focuses on building an empire, Alefanar is the Skaven legendary lord of the High Elves, Alfarian is on a crusade to kill the green people of Warhammer, and Emmerich is all about the dragons. And it's not the question of geographic positions, it's like the objectives of the campaign, the faction effects, or Lord's Guilds that do make them better. Dark Elves, I think, like, yeah, just a lack of differentiation or issues in campaigns that do make them suffer. Also, could we have a different long campaign objective than just wiping out Wolf-1? That would certainly help things out, right? From my perspective. That's all I had to say. Questine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.